The massive crystal dome of the Galactic Council chambers sparkled under the light of three suns. Inside, hundreds of beings from across the galaxy sat in curved rows that reached toward the ceiling. Some floated in anti-gravity pods, others perched on specialized seats designed for their unique body shapes, but all of them shared the same expression of mild boredom as Earth's representative approached the speaking platform. James Miller adjusted his plain blue suit and straightened his shoulders. After 15 years as humanity's voice in the council, he had grown used to the dismissive looks and barely hidden sneers. Today was no different. The amphibian delegate from the water worlds was already drifting off to sleep, and the crystalline beings from the outer rim were deliberately turning away their sensory arrays. The Earth delegation requests attention for an important announcement. Miller spoke into the universal translator. His voice echoed through the chamber, causing a ripple of annoyed movements among the assembled representatives. The council leader, a tall being with silver skin who went by the simple name First, raised one of their four hands. Earth has been granted 17 announcements this year already. All of them have been matters that could have been handled by lower committees. Quiet laughter spread through the chamber. Miller noticed several representatives making the universal gesture for primitive species, a quick tap to their heads followed by a dismissive wave. He had seen it so many times before. Earth has been part of this council for 97 years, continued First, their voice carrying the weighted patience one might use with a child. Yet you still haven't learned the proper protocols for. I apologize for the interruption, Miller said, his voice firm but respectful. But Nelson Mandela has died. The chamber fell silent for exactly 3 seconds before erupting in confused murmurs. Miller could hear the universal translators working overtime as representatives tried to understand why he was announcing the death of a single human. Representative Miller First spoke again. While we acknowledge your species' custom of marking the passing of individuals, the council cannot be interrupted for every human death. There are billions of you. Miller nodded slowly. You're absolutely right, First. There are billions of us. But there was only one Nelson Mandela, a delegate from the industrial worlds, their mechanical body whirring softly, leaned forward. Our records show this human held no significant technological patents. He made no scientific discoveries. He never even left Earth's atmosphere. Why should the council care about his passing? Because, Miller said, reaching for the control panel in front of him, he showed humanity, and perhaps the galaxy, something far more important than any technology. His fingers moved across the controls, and suddenly, the chamber's holographic system came to life. The lights dimmed automatically as images began to form in the air above them. The crystalline beings turned their sensory arrays back toward the display, their curiosity finally sparked. Even the sleeping amphibian delegate stirred awake. What you're about to see, Miller continued, his voice growing softer, but somehow filling the entire chamber, is something that many of your species have claimed was impossible. You've called humans primitive because we still fight wars, because we divide ourselves by color and belief, because we can be cruel to our own kind. The holographic images sharpened, showing scenes from Earth's past. The council members watched as the first images of apartheid South Africa began to play. You were right about our capacity for cruelty, Miller said, watching as the council members began to shift uncomfortably in their seats. But you were wrong about what makes a species advanced. Today, I'm going to show you why. First raised their hand again, but this time there was something different in their posture. Proceed. Representative Miller, they said, their silver skin reflecting the harsh images above them. Show us what makes this human's death worthy of the council's attention. Miller nodded, and the story of Nelson Mandela began to unfold in the air above them. For the first time in 15 years, every single being in the chamber was paying attention to Earth's representative, and he knew that by the end of this session, none of them would ever look at humanity the same way again. The holographic displays filled the council chamber with images of a divided Earth, streets separated by concrete walls, beaches with signs marking them for different races, separate entrances to buildings based on skin color. The alien representatives watched in complete silence as humanity's past unfolded before them. "What you're seeing," Miller explained, his voice steady, "is a system called apartheid. For decades, humans in a nation called South Africa were separated and treated differently based solely on the color of their skin. A representative with glowing blue skin raised 3 of their tentacles. This seems inefficient. Why would humans create such a system?" "Fear," Miller replied simply. "Fear and the desire for power. The lighter-skinned minority feared losing control, so they created laws to keep the darker-skinned majority powerless." The images shifted to show police beating protesters, families being forced from their homes, and children crying as their parents were taken away. Several council members turned away, their various biological and mechanical systems showing signs of distress. First, the council leader leaned forward. "And this Mandela, he was one of the oppressors." "No," Miller said, pressing another button. The image changed to show a younger Mandela standing proud in a courtroom. "He fought against this system. He believed all humans deserved to be treated equally, regardless of their skin color." The mechanical delegate from before made a sound like grinding gears. "Then he organized an army, led a rebellion. Our records show humans typically resolve such conflicts through violence." Miller shook his head. He and his allies did try peaceful protest first. But when that failed, yes, they did resort to fighting back. However, they specifically chose to damage property, not people. They wanted to hurt the system, not kill their oppressors. The images showed Mandela's arrest, his trial, and then his prison cell on Robben Island. The council chamber grew even quieter as they watched him break rocks in the prison yard, year after year after year. 27 years, Miller said into the silence. They kept him in prison for 27 years. An insectoid representative clicked their mandibles in confusion. 27 solar cycles. For wanting equality. Even our species, who fight constant wars between our hive colonies, would consider this excessive. But this isn't the important part, Miller continued, his fingers moving across the control panel again. What matters is what happened next. The hologram shifted to show Mandela walking free, his fist raised in triumph. But instead of scenes of revenge or violence, the council watched in amazement as Mandela spoke about forgiveness and reconciliation. "After everything they did to him," Miller said, his voice growing stronger, "after taking 27 years of his life, Nelson Mandela chose forgiveness over vengeance. He worked with his former oppressors to create a new society where all humans could live together in peace." The crystalline being's surfaces began to pulse with colored lights, their way of showing extreme emotion. The amphibian delegate was now fully awake, their large eyes fixed on the images. Even first seemed to be struggling to maintain their usual composed demeanor. "Impossible," whispered a shadow being from the dark worlds. "No species could evolve such capacity for forgiveness. There must be some mistake in the historical record." Miller smiled for the first time since entering the chamber. No mistake. In fact, this is just the beginning of his story. Nelson Mandela didn't just forgive his oppressors. He united a deeply divided nation. He showed humanity that there was a better way forward than endless cycles of violence and revenge. The images now showed Mandela at his presidential inauguration, the crowds cheering, people of all colors celebrating together. The council representatives watched, transfixed, as they witnessed something many of them had believed impossible. A species choosing unity over division, forgiveness over revenge. "Continue," First commanded, their silver skin reflecting the joyous scenes above. "Show us more about this human who could do the impossible." And Miller nodded, knowing that the real impact of Mandela's story was yet to come. The holographic images shifted again, showing Mandela's first days as president of South Africa. The council chamber remained unusually quiet, with representatives of over 200 alien species watching intently as history unfolded before them. "What you're seeing now," Miller explained, "is something that had never happened before in our history. A man who was once labeled a terrorist by his government became its leader, not through violence, but through peaceful elections. The mechanical delegates' optical sensors whirred as they focused on the images. Our analysis shows that humans typically seek revenge when they gain power. Why didn't this Mandela eliminate his former enemies? Miller gestured toward the hologram, which now showed Mandela sharing tea with the wives of his former oppressors. Because he understood something that even some advanced species still struggle with. The cycle of revenge only leads to more pain. Fascinating, buzzed the insectoid representative. In our hive colonies, victory always means the destruction of the losing side. This is different. The images changed to show the Rugby World Cup of 1995. Alien representatives leaned forward as they watched Mandela, wearing the green Springbok jersey, once a symbol of white oppression, walk onto the field to support South Africa's team. First raised all four hands, a sign of extreme interest. Explain this gesture. Why would he wear the uniform of his oppressors? Because it wasn't about the past anymore, Miller said softly. Mandela knew that to build a true rainbow nation, as he called it, he needed to embrace both sides. The jersey was a message. We are all South Africans now. The crystalline beings began emitting soft harmonics, their way of expressing deep emotional impact. The hologram showed crowds of both black and white South Africans celebrating together as their team won the championship. Our species has existed for 50,000 of your years. A gaseous being spoke from their containment sphere. We have mastered space travel, energy manipulation, and genetic engineering. Yet we have never seen social evolution at this speed. It defies all known models of species development. Miller nodded. Many humans felt the same way. What Mandela did seemed impossible, even to us. But he showed us that the impossible becomes possible when you choose a different path. The images now displayed Mandela's work after his presidency, his efforts to fight poverty, his campaign against HIV/AIDS, his support for peace initiatives around the world. The council watched as an elderly Mandela continued to work for human rights long after he could have retired in comfort. Tell us, first said, their silver skin now rippling with emotion. What did your people call this ability? This power to transform hatred into unity. Ubuntu, Miller replied. It's a word from Mandela's homeland. It means I am because we are. The idea that our humanity is tied together, that we can only truly exist through our connections with others. The amphibian delegate, now fully alert, made a soft trilling sound. Even the most advanced species in the council have needed outside intervention to achieve social harmony. Yet your people did this, on your own. We did, Miller confirmed. And not just in South Africa. Mandela's example inspired people around our world. When they saw that forgiveness was possible, that enemies could become friends, it changed everything. The shadow being from the dark worlds floated closer to the hologram. And this is why you interrupted the council today. Because this one human showed your species a new way to evolve. No, Miller said, his finger hovering over the control panel. I interrupted the council because what Mandela taught humanity isn't just for Earth. What you're about to see next proves that his legacy might be the key to solving conflicts across the entire galaxy. The chamber grew even quieter, if that was possible. Even the usual background hum of life support systems seemed muted as the council representatives waited for Miller to continue. They had come expecting another trivial human interruption. Instead, they were witnessing something that would change their understanding of what was possible. Miller pressed the button, ready to show them the next chapter of Mandela's legacy, one that would reshape the galaxy's future. Miller touched the control panel again, and the holographic display changed to show a sequence of brain scans. The alien representatives leaned forward, their various sensory organs focusing on the strange images. These, Miller explained, are human brain scans. The first set shows the brain's reaction to hatred and revenge. The images glowed red and orange, highlighting active areas. And these, he continued, switching to a new set, Show the brain during acts of forgiveness and reconciliation. The amphibian delegate blinked its large eyes. The patterns are completely different. Exactly, Miller said. When our scientists studied people practicing Mandela's principles of forgiveness, they discovered something remarkable. The brain actually rewires itself. We don't just learn to forgive. We evolve to forgive. First rose from their chair, all four arms extended in the gesture of profound revelation. Are you suggesting that this Mandela discovered a way to accelerate species evolution through behavioral change? Not discovered, Miller corrected gently. He demonstrated it, and the results went far beyond what anyone expected. The hologram shifted to show massive protest crowds dissolving into peaceful discussions, warring groups laying down weapons, children from formerly hostile regions playing together. Each image was tagged with dates, showing the rapid spread of these changes across Earth. The crystalline beings vibrated with such intensity that their protective fields had to adjust. Impossible. Social evolution at this speed defies all known scientific models. We thought the same thing, Miller agreed. But the evidence was undeniable. Mandela showed us that when you give people a real alternative to hatred, when you prove that forgiveness works, they choose it. Not everyone, and not right away, but enough to change the course of history. The shadow being drifted closer to the display. This explains much about your species' rapid advancement. We wondered how humans progressed from primitive planetary conflicts to joining the Galactic Council in less than 2 centuries. Miller nodded. While other species focused on technological evolution, humanity was experiencing a different kind of advancement. Mandela helped us understand that true progress isn't just about building better machines. It's about building better ways to live together. The mechanical delegate's sensors whirred loudly. Our record shows 17 major conflicts resolved through Mandela methods in the past 50 Earth years. The success rate is statistically significant. But that's not why I'm here today, Miller said, his voice growing stronger. I'm here because of what happened next. Computer, display incident report 47B. The hologram changed again, showing a scene that made several council members gasp. It was footage from a peace negotiation between 2 alien species who had been at war for 3 centuries. The mediator was human, and they were clearly using Mandela's principles. This was the first time we applied his teachings to an interspecies conflict, Miller explained. The results were beyond anything we expected. First, Silver Skin had turned almost white with excitement. The Duraxian-Holt peace treaty. That was based on human methods, on this Mandela's teachings. Yes, Miller confirmed. And it wasn't the only one. In the past 20 years, human mediators using Mandela's principles have helped resolve 32 major conflicts between different species. The success rate is even higher than with human conflicts. The chamber erupted in murmurs and various alien expressions of astonishment. The revelation that humanity's primitive social evolution had actually produced something the advanced species hadn't achieved was almost too much to process. There's more, Miller said quietly, his hand hovering over the control panel again. Much more, because what Mandela really gave us, gave all of us, was something even more valuable than peace. The council chamber grew still again, waiting to hear what could possibly be more important than that. The holographic display filled the council chamber with new images, dozens of worlds, hundreds of species, all connected by golden lines of diplomatic relations. What you're seeing, Miller said, is the growth of peaceful relationships between species after we introduced Mandela's principles. Each line represents a conflict resolved using his methods. The gaseous being's containment sphere pulsed with rapid color changes. The pattern, it's exponential. Because it spreads, Miller explained. When one group learns these methods, they teach others, just like Mandela taught us, and we taught others. The mechanical delegate's data processors hummed loudly. Processing historical data. Confirmed. Galactic conflicts have decreased by 47% since humans joined the Council. We had not connected these events until now. First leaned forward, their silver skin shimmering with intensity. "Show us more, Representative Miller. Show us what happened on Proxima Beta." Miller nodded and changed the display. The hologram now showed a harsh desert planet where two silicon-based species had fought over water resources for a millennium. "This was our biggest test," Miller said. "Two species so different from humans that many said our methods couldn't possibly work with them. But watch." The council members observed as human mediators taught the silicon beings about Mandela's life. They watched as these creatures, who had never known anything but war, began to understand the concept of forgiveness. "It took 3 years," Miller continued, "but they found their own way to apply his principles. They didn't copy what we did on Earth. They created their own path to peace, inspired by his example." The insectoid representative clicked their mandibles excitedly. "The silicon piece. We thought it was a natural evolution." "You mean humans guided this?" "No," Miller corrected. "We didn't guide it. We just showed them it was possible, like Mandela showed us." The hologram shifted again, displaying statistics and data streams. The crystalline beings began humming in their emotion frequencies as they read the numbers. "Since implementing these principles," Miller explained, "galactic trade has increased by 156%. Scientific cooperation between species is up by 234%. Even space exploration has accelerated because species are working together instead of fighting." A shadow being floated closer to the display. "Your species was considered too young, too primitive to have anything to teach us. We were wrong. That's what Mandela taught us too," Miller said softly. "That we're all capable of being wrong, and we're all capable of admitting it and changing." First stood up, causing a ripple of surprise through the chamber. The council leader rarely showed such obvious emotion. Representative Miller first spoke, their voice carrying unusual warmth. "Why have you waited until now to reveal the full scope of humanity's influence on galactic peace?" Miller's expression grew solemn. "Because today marks the end of an era. With Mandela's passing, humanity needed to understand our responsibility. His methods don't just belong to Earth anymore. They belong to the galaxy." The amphibian delegate raised their webbed hand. "The numbers are clear. If this trend continues, we could see an end to all major galactic conflicts within just 3 generations. Which brings me to my proposal," Miller said, straightening his shoulders. "Earth requests permission to establish the Galactic Reconciliation Institute, named in honor of Nelson Mandela. A place where any species can learn these principles and adapt them to their own cultures." The chamber erupted in a cacophony of voices, gestures, and various alien expressions of approval. Even species that had been historic enemies were signaling their support. First raised all 4 hands for silence. When the chamber quieted, they spoke with clear emotion in their voice. "Representative Miller, I believe I speak for the entire council when I say that humanity has given us something we never expected to receive from such a young species: hope." Miller nodded, knowing that somewhere, Mandela was smiling at how far his simple, powerful idea had spread, from a prison cell on a small planet to the vast reaches of the galaxy. The council chamber had changed. Where there had once been dismissive glances and bored expressions, now every representative sat forward, fully engaged. The holographic display showed scenes from across the galaxy. Peaceful resolutions, former enemies working together, new alliances forming. "What you're about to see," Miller said, "is something we discovered by accident." He pressed a control, and the display changed to show brain scans again. But this time, they weren't human. "These are scans from 15 different species," he explained, "all of them after learning and practicing Mandela's principles of forgiveness and reconciliation." The mechanical delegate's lights flashed rapidly. "The patterns, they're identical to the human scans you showed earlier." "Yes," Miller nodded. "It turns out that the capacity for forgiveness isn't just a human trait. It's universal. We were just the first to discover how to activate it consistently." The crystalline beings began to pulse with deep blue light, their sign of profound understanding. So when Mandela spent those 27 years in prison, he wasn't just changing himself, or even just changing humanity. Miller completed the thought. He was discovering something that would change the entire galaxy. We just didn't know it at the time. First rose from their chair again, all four arms extended. Council members, what we are witnessing here is unprecedented. A species we considered primitive has given us the key to genuine galactic peace. The gaseous being's containment sphere rippled with energy. But how did humans discover this first? Many of our species are far older, far more technologically advanced. Miller smiled. Maybe that was exactly why. You see, humans had to solve our problems without advanced technology. We couldn't rely on force fields to separate fighting groups or neural programmers to enforce peace. We had to find another way. The hologram shifted to show Mandela again, this time walking among people of all colors, sharing simple moments of connection. Look at his face, Miller said softly. He's not using any special technology. He's not employing advanced psychological techniques. He's just showing people a better way to live. And that's why it works, because it's simple enough for anyone to understand and use. The insectoid representative's antennae quivered. Our scientists always said that rapid social evolution was impossible without technological intervention. Your species proved them wrong. More than that, Miller replied. We proved that the simplest solutions are often the most powerful. Mandela didn't need advanced technology to change the world. He just needed courage, wisdom, and the willingness to forgive. The shadow being drifted closer to the display. And now you propose to share this wisdom with the entire galaxy. Yes, Miller said firmly, but not as teachers, as equals. Because that's another thing Mandela taught us. No one is superior or inferior. We're all capable of both great harm and great good. What matters is which path we choose. First, Silver Skin had taken on a deep, resonant glow. Council members, I believe we are witnessing a pivotal moment in galactic history. The humans have shown us that true advancement isn't measured by technological progress alone. The chamber filled with sounds of agreement in hundreds of different languages and forms. Species that had never agreed on anything were nodding, humming, glowing their approval. Representative Miller first continued, I believe the Council owes humanity an apology. We have treated you as lesser beings, when in fact you were pioneering advancement in ways we had never considered. Miller shook his head. No apology is needed first. As Mandela taught us, acknowledging our mistakes and choosing to move forward together is more important than any apology. The chamber grew quiet as the weight of his words sank in. They were witnessing not just the sharing of knowledge, but the living demonstration of Mandela's principles. And Miller knew the most important part was still to come. Miller stood at the podium one last time, looking out at the transformed council chamber. The holographic display now showed a single image, Nelson Mandela's smiling face. Before I conclude, Miller said, his voice clear and strong, I have one final piece of evidence to share. Computer, display Earth message 27A. The hologram changed to show hundreds of scenes from Earth. Children in schools learning about forgiveness, former enemies sharing meals, people from different backgrounds working together to solve problems. This is Earth today, Miller explained. Not perfect, not without problems, but fundamentally changed. And it all started with one man's choice in a prison cell. First step down from their raised platform, something no council leader had ever done before, and walked to stand beside Miller. Members of the council first announced, I propose an immediate vote, the creation of the Mandela Doctrine, as the foundation of all future galactic diplomacy. The mechanical delegates' processors whirred. Clarification requested. What exactly would this doctrine entail? Miller touched his control panel one last time. A simple list appeared in the air. Understanding before judgment, forgiveness over revenge, unity through respect, peace through reconciliation, progress through cooperation. These were Mandela's core principles, Miller said. simple enough for any species to understand, yet powerful enough to change the galaxy. The chamber erupted in light, sound, and motion as species began voting. Even ancient enemies who had never agreed on anything were signaling their approval. The amphibian delegate raised their voice. The vote is unanimous. For the first time in the Council's history, all species agree. First turn to Miller, their silver skin glowing brightly. Representative Miller, the Council hereby establishes Earth as the center for galactic peace studies. All species will send representatives to learn these principles. The crystalline beings began harmonizing, their highest form of celebration. The shadow beings created patterns of light in the air. The insectoid representatives clicked their mandibles in rhythm. Miller smiled, thinking of how far humanity had come. From being seen as primitive newcomers to becoming teachers of the galaxy's most advanced species. There's one more thing, he said quietly, and the chamber fell silent. Mandela once said, "It always seems impossible until it's done." Today, we've proven him right. But our work is just beginning. First raised all four hands. The Council recognizes Earth's unique contribution to galactic civilization. From this day forward, all diplomatic protocols will incorporate human wisdom alongside technological advancement. The gaseous being's sphere pulsed with bright colors. If one human could change his planet, and his planet could change the galaxy, what else might be possible? Miller stepped back from the podium. That's the final lesson Mandela taught us. The possible is just the impossible that someone decided to make happen. As Miller turned to leave the chamber, something unprecedented occurred. Every member of the Council, from the oldest species to the newest, stood in respect. The chamber filled with the sounds and signs of hundreds of different ways of showing honor. First's voice carried over the celebration. Let the record show that on this day, the galaxy learned the true meaning of advancement from its youngest members. And let us never forget that the greatest changes can come from the simplest truths. Miller paused at the chamber doors, looking back one last time. The hologram of Mandela still smiled down at the gathered species, his wisdom now reaching far beyond the boundaries of Earth. As the doors closed behind him, Miller heard First beginning to explain the details of the new Galactic Reconciliation Institute. He knew that somewhere, in whatever came after life, Mandela was watching, pleased that his dream of peace and unity had grown beyond anything he could have imagined. The impossible had become possible, and the galaxy would never be the same.